Try this test. Imagine you wake up in Rome in the year 115. You have no citizenship papers, no modern money, and no idea which rules protect you. What do you do first? Find food, find work, or find protection? Because in ancient Rome, a normal day is a machine. It turns grain into loyalty, wages into status, baths into social networks, and law into an economy of trust. If you want to understand why Rome could rule millions, don't start with legions. Start with breakfast. It is just before sunrise. The city is already loud. Donkeys creak under loads, bakers fire ovens, water carriers argue at fountains. The poor are awake because their day is purchased in hours, not in plans. You wake in an insula, a crowded apartment block. The higher you live, the cheaper the rent, and the higher the risk. Stairs are steep. Water is carried up by hand. Fires spread fast. A single spark can erase a month of wages. Rent is not a background detail. It is one of the largest drains on a household. Landlords, agents, and builders sit at a quiet power point in the Roman economy because shelter is scarce and the city keeps pulling people in. Rome is not one economy. It is layers stacked on the same streets. At the top, senators with estates and rents. Below, equestrians running contracts and shipping. Below, shopkeepers, artisans, freedmen, and clerks. Below, day laborers and the enslaved, whose time is owned outright. And yet the whole system must feel, most days, predictable. Predictability is the hidden luxury that keeps a giant city from eating itself. Scene 1 is food. Most Romans do not begin with a feast. They begin with something simple. Bread, olives, maybe a little cheese, watered wine. For the poor, the key question is not taste, it is price. If bread spikes, everything spikes: anger, theft, politics. Rome's answer to the bread problem is policy. Grain is the base of urban stability, so the state interferes. Ships bring grain from North Africa and Egypt. Warehouses hold it. Officials measure it. And for many citizens, a ration is not charity, it is membership. This is one of Rome's great economic inventions: turn food into legitimacy. The state is not feeding you because it is kind. It is feeding you because a city of 1 million is a permanent risk. But here's the twist. The grain supply is also a vulnerability. Storms, piracy, bad harvests, or corruption in contracts can choke the city. Rome must protect sea lanes, ports, and storage the way it protects borders. A loaf of bread is foreign policy you can hold. Now, follow the water. Aqueducts deliver it, but distribution is still unequal. Fountains are public, pipes are private, and private pipes tend to follow money. Water is also a business. Carriers sell it, bathhouses buy it, and builders fight over access. As the sun rises, the streets fill with sellers. You see small economies everywhere. A woman selling hot porridge, a boy offering lamp oil, a freedman advertising, legal services, a barber with a stool, a man hauling bricks for a construction crew. If you need work today, you go where work gathers. The forum's edges, big building sites, docks, and the corners where employers know men will wait. Day labor is a market. It has supply and demand, and it has bargaining power, except bargaining is thin when hunger is thick. Wages vary by skill. A trained mason is not priced like a porter. A scribe who can calculate accounts is not priced like a man with only muscle. Rome's economy runs on specialization, and specialization creates hierarchy. Walk into a workshop, and you see the empire in miniature. A potter shapes bowls that will travel downriver. A fuller cleans and dyes cloth with chemicals that sting the throat. A metalworker repairs hinges for a landlord's door. Each trade is local, but the demand is imperial. Now the part most people miss: slavery does not eliminate labor markets, it distorts them. Enslaved workers do much of the heavy lifting, but free workers still compete, especially in services and skilled trades. The result is a constant pressure on the lower free classes to find niches, small shops, tiny contracts, odd jobs, patronage. Patronage is Rome's informal welfare state. A poor citizen attaches himself to a powerful patron. In exchange for public support, votes, and social presence, he receives introductions, occasional money, and the most valuable asset: access. Access is the currency that matters when courts, contracts, and markets depend on who will vouch for you. By mid-morning, the city shifts to transactions. Rome is a cash economy, but it is also an economy of credit. Coins pass from hand to hand: bronze for small purchases, silver for serious trade, gold for the very large. Yet many deals are promises. A shopkeeper sells on account, a landlord waits for rent, a merchant borrows to outfit a ship. Picture a merchant at the river port. He needs olive oil from Baetica, glass from the east, and grain sacks moving inland. He signs a contract, pays in advance, and trusts that the ship arrives intact. The sea is risk, so risk itself gets priced. Credit is not just money, it is reputation. And reputation in Rome is tied to law. You walk past the basilicas, large public halls where business and legal cases happen. Here, contracts become enforceable not because everyone is virtuous, but because everyone fears consequences. Law creates the expectation that a promise has a price. But law is not equal. If you are a citizen, you have tools, contracts, courts, appeals. If you are not, your protection is thinner. If you are enslaved, your legal self is almost non-existent. The system is coherent, yet stratified. This stratification is economic. It decides who can take risks. A man with legal standing can borrow, invest, sue, and be sued. A man without it must trade in smaller circles, where violence and betrayal are harder to punish. Consider a small case. A cloak stolen at a tavern. A citizen can name a witness, bring a complaint, and pressure the thief's associates. A non-citizen may have to accept the loss or find a patron to speak for him. The same act produces different outcomes because the system assigns different weights to different people. At noon, the heat builds, the rich retreat to shaded atriums, the poor keep moving, and the city's most underestimated institution begins to hum: the baths. Think of the baths as Rome's public infrastructure, like roads, aqueducts, and sewers, but tuned for social life. For a small fee, you enter. You leave your clothes. You step into warm rooms, hot rooms, cold pools. Steam rises. Conversations rise with it. The bathhouse is not a luxury add-on. It is a social equalizer with limits. Senators may have private baths, but they still appear in public ones to be seen. Freedmen and artisans use the baths to network. Athletes sell training. Doctors offer advice. Poets recite lines. Deals are whispered where no one seems to be negotiating. Here is where everything breaks and repairs at the same time. Rome is a city of strangers. The baths turn strangers into familiar faces. Familiar faces turn into trust. Trust turns into business. A bath ticket is cheaper than private hospitality, but it buys social contact, and social contact is economic oxygen. The baths also reveal Rome's energy system. Heating water at scale requires fuel, wood, charcoal, and logistics. Someone cuts trees, someone transports loads, someone maintains boilers. An urban amenity becomes a supply chain. Rome's comfort consumes the countryside. Outside the baths, you might see another kind of association: the collegia, trade, and neighborhood groups. Some are guild-like, some social, some religious. They help members bury the dead, find jobs, and protect reputations. In a city where the state cannot know everyone, these groups become safety nets, and sometimes political muscle. In the afternoon, Rome turns toward law and status. If you have a dispute over a boundary, a debt, an insult, an inheritance, you do not only want justice, you want leverage. Roman law is detailed, but the real world is messy. The best outcomes belong to people who can endure long procedures, pay advocates, and pressure witnesses. So the law becomes a market too, a market for representation, for paperwork, for influence. The poor still go to court, but they enter with fewer chips. And yet Rome's legal culture is a strength. Compared to a world where power is only personal, Rome offers a framework. It standardizes expectations across distance. A merchant can ship goods and rely, at least somewhat, on rules that others recognize. That is why Rome's empire can be an integrated economy. Conquest is the opening act. Administration is the long performance. As evening approaches, the city's tempo changes again. Shops close, taverns fill. The smell of fish sauce and smoke drifts through alleyways. For many, dinner is again bread-based. Pulses, vegetables, maybe scraps of meat if luck and money align. For the wealthy, dinner is theatre. Courses arrive like politics, display, alliance, obligation. Guests are chosen as carefully as ingredients. A seat at a table is a sign that you are inside a network. After dinner, some seek entertainment. Dice games in back rooms, street performers, lamps glowing under arches. Others walk past the amphitheatre and remember that even spectacle has an economic purpose. Public games are expensive, but they buy calm. They redirect anger into applause. They remind the crowd that the system, for all its unfairness, can still deliver moments of shared pleasure. Networks are the true architecture of Roman life. Grain binds citizens to the state. Work binds the poor to survival. Baths bind strangers into familiarity. Law binds promises into enforceable reality. Dinner binds elites into coalitions. Now step back and ask the economic question. What keeps this day from collapsing into chaos? First, distribution. Rome solves the urban food problem by building an imperial grain pipeline. It is expensive, but rebellion is more expensive. Second, incentives. The city rewards skill, not just birth, through trades, freedman enterprise, and contracts, while still protecting elite dominance through property and status. Third, institutions. The baths, the courts, the patronage system, the collegia, and the coinage network reduce transaction costs. They make it cheaper to trust, cheaper to trade, cheaper to cooperate. But Rome pays for this stability with hidden debts. One debt is dependence on extraction. Provinces supply grain, taxes, and rents. The city consumes. When shocks hit the provinces, Rome's center becomes harder to feed and finance. Another debt is inequality. The same networks that create stability also lock people into ranks. If you are born with no patron, no capital, and no legal power, your options shrink. The city may be predictable, but it is not forgiving. A third debt is ecological. Fuel for baths, timber for buildings, land for grain. The empire is a machine that eats landscapes. Comfort is not free. It is purchased far from the marble streets. So what is the lesson of a day in ancient Rome? Use this checklist. 1. Follow the calories. Who controls food, and how does food become politics? 2. Follow the rent. Who owns shelter, and how much of life's income disappears into a room? 3. Follow the time. Who owns labor, through wages, contracts, or coercion, and what mobility exists? 4. Follow the networks. Where do people meet, exchange favors, and convert reputation into opportunity? 5. Follow the rules. Who can use law to enforce promises, and who must rely on patrons or fear? If you can answer those 5, you can read any civilization like an account book. Next episode, we follow Rome's money itself, how coin supply, taxes, and military pay quietly shape power, peace, and panic over centuries too. And here is your forward-looking question. When a society grows large enough that strangers must trade daily, what replaces the baths? What public spaces and shared rules make trust cheap today, and what happens when they fail?